Hey, thank you so much. I know we skipped a couple of podcasts, but we're at the tail end of this wonderful election and dealing with a lot of wonderful issues out there. Some controversial, some very hitting home to a lot of things that's near and dear to your heart. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what we could do to save our counties, especially save our school. But as we know, our schools fall within a wonderful county that has a variety of different things. And with us today, I have two special guests, and I'm actually not going to be moderating this. We have Mary Strayhorn, who's running for Soil and Water Conservation. And second to that, we have a longtime member of the community, very much an activist within the community, really pushing for change in a positive way for Fairfax County. We have Jeff Hoffman, who's part of the Virginia Parents First Coalition. So what I'm going to do is kick it off to them. They're going to give a little bit of intro, and then Jeff wanted to moderate this and make this a fun, exciting podcast that we're going to enjoy. So let's start off with Mary. Let's talk about your platform, what you're looking for, what you're hoping to do, and we're kind of keeping it down to 2 minutes.
So I'm Mary Strayhorn. I'm running for the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District Board seat director. There's 3 seats. Please vote for me. VirginiaForGoodGovernance.com. One of the things that our board does is we collaborate with other agencies within Virginia to advise and educate on conservation issues within the county and having to do with plant life, soil, water, and anything having to do with the environment. It's mostly an advisory board. We actually don't have the legal authority to do anything, but we do advise the legal authority and help them get funding.
Well, I take it another way. I think as an advisor, you do have the authority because it's all about giving recommendations and using your knowledge and expertise to tell people, especially those that actually have the purse strings, on what they need to do. I mean, we saw it. Look at Fauci.
We have the authority to advise.
Exactly.
Well, advise, and I don't know if this has been completely clarified, but within the Fairfax County government, and we also talked to Brian Murphy, who's running for the Board of Supervisors in Providence, but more specific to the schools, which you are a school board elect in Providence.
Thank you so much for that.
JET, the Environmental Task Force. And when we were doing some research and looking at some of the organizational structure of the JET, you would think that there would be some representation and advising from Soil and Water Director.
But there actually isn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there should be. That's why when we start looking at a county, what I see right now, and we'll go to Jeff, we'll go to the intro. But what I see in the county of Fairfax Public Schools, you have one Fairfax that develops this whole bureaucracy. And then you have a carbon copy within Fairfax County Public School, such as the Equity Diversity Chair or Chief. Why are we creating 2 different things? And that's where when we start looking at being fiscally responsible, we're looking at trying to look at the dollars, where is it going, and why are we reproducing certain things? And I think it's as good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, we have to look at things and say, listen, there's no need to reproduce something when we have elected official, such as Soil and Water, and to say, this falls within your purview, and if it doesn't necessarily completely fall, maybe we need to expand that role instead of hiring people for 6 figures, which this county loves to do, when we have elected officials willing to take on that task. So before we continue on, let's talk about Jeff. Jeff, what's your project? The Virginia Parents Coalition.
Yeah, coalition.
So let's talk about a little bit about that.
But let me go back real quick to the Soil and Water Director. I think you're absolutely more qualified than Carl Frisch to sit on that task force.
Oh, I agree.
And that is the one person who has been sitting on.
Oh, sorry. Listen, guys, this is a technical thing. I just hit a button here and everything came up.
Listen, guys, This is not a technical thing.
Like I
just-
said, this is a bunch of people that just do this out on their own, and we tend to have technical glitches. I think a couple of times we had people's heads popping away because we are a bunch of amateurs trying to do
Well,
this
Mr.
just to
Finn
get the
every once
information
in a
out.
while say,
But nevertheless, I apologize. Jeff, go back to what you were saying.
Yeah, well, again, bottom line, I think you're more qualified than Carl Frisch on conservation issues in your whole platform and what you're running for as a soil and water director. And so I just want to thank you for
Thank you.
standing up, right? It's not easy, as you know, Tony,
Yeah, it's
Right?
definitely not easy.
to stand up and be a candidate and, want to be representative of, people's voices and concerns and issues. And we've heard enough of that.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 years. And that leads to the Virginia Parents First Coalition. I came back from overseas. I was on an assignment in the UK working for US European Command. I came back here after having worked campaigns before that. And I saw parents at school board meetings
Mhm.
and rallies.
Yeah.
And it was something very simple. It wasn't saying, hey, we want you to get rid of this regulation. We just want to compromise.
Yeah.
Right? We want a simple word actually added to policy and regulation and handbooks, student rights and responsibilities. Handbook is one of the more popular policies that they have. Rights, right after the word parents. And they couldn't do it.
That's
They
amazing.
couldn't even have a conversation about it. And so this is the thing that I think has been frustrating, and I call them the silent majority, which are the hundreds of thousands of parents and taxpayers in Fairfax County who not necessarily are afraid to come out, but who need to come out,
I agree.
who need to come out, right, and say what they believe.
Mhm.
Teachers, staff, especially now with collective bargaining, that has made a lot of progress within the Fairfax County Public Schools. You're never going to get a teacher or staff member to come out and talk
Exactly.
about what's going on in the classroom.
So we're gonna.
Which is actually unfortunate.
So let's go ahead and kick this off. And Jeff, you wanted to moderate this whole thing and
Oh,
pose
absolutely.
a bunch of questions.
yeah.
Now, like I said, this whole podcast is not about we're just not going to go through the negativity. We're going to identify issues and come out with real solutions. Now, this podcast could be a couple of series, but we don't have that. Now, the last 15 minutes, we will take questions. So you have questions for any one of us dealing with soil water, dealing with leaf removal, dealing with the safety of your kids at your schools. Please bring that in. Type in your message. At the last 15 minutes, we're going to address those. So with that, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Ask away.
So this is actually, and I just want to set a little bit of baseline with the Virginia Parents First Coalition. This is actually where we were envisioning of being,
Mhm.
right here, right? We were founded. We have a PAC arm. In about 3 months in 2022, we raised about $7,000, and we helped fund some candidates in 22
Mhm.
and help with some of the grassroots and GOTV efforts. And so here we are, 2 years later, and we have two great candidates. One for school board
Yes.
in the Providence district, and you, Mary, for soil and water. And so I mentioned earlier the jet and how you were a bit more qualified than Carl, right? This is why this is important tonight, because you see all the interconnectivity between the Fairfax County Public Schools in different areas where you can work together
It does.
for
Yeah,
solutions,
definitely.
especially the Board of Supervisors. Now, let me just tell you, and first, I'm going to tell you from the debate or public forum that you were in 5-6 days ago at Mantua Precinct. You mentioned the word audit,
Yes.
right? Not just the
Yes.
budget, but the curriculum. Everything that's going on in these schools, whether it's the management of these schools or what the kids are actually getting taught, or what they're not getting taught.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I was in a community conversation with Dr. Reed, superintendent.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything. I wasn't provocative.
Yeah.
Right. But there's another parent is saying, my kid's not learning anything.
Yeah.
And if parents are saying these things and they're thinking these things in the county, something to me doesn't seem like it's working the way that a normal school system, normal common sense school system should work. And so first, to start off with moderating, I'd like to just ask you, Tony, why'd you get into this?
So,
And
that's a
what are
very
your
good
top
question.
three issues?
It's a very good question.
Right? I mean, if you look at large, you look at Sandra Davis, who I think is doing a phenomenal job. She is running in a district, in an area, an environment, and I've worked congressional campaigns that are bigger than a congressional campaign.
Yes. Yes.
700,000 active registered voters and 9 districts.
Yes.
And you're one of those 9.
Yes, and to go to those at large that are working every day hard to get the votes out and everything, God bless them. They've been doing a phenomenal job, and each and every one of them, I'll be proud to serve with them. But one of the reasons why I actually looked at taking the service on was before this, I used to do podcasts and talk on radio and about issues, a lot with mental health and a lot in the field that I work in, which is security, specifically school safety. And one of the things I always said at the end, and it's amazing because we're doing a podcast, I'm doing a national podcast again with the Deborah Peters show. And she asked me right after Uvalde, granted, that's way before I decided to run, give me 12 things that people should do to help fix things in our nation. And one of it was get involved in your local election. And so when I started, talking about these things, I was very passionate about it, trying to get people to come out and get involved, volunteer, know what's going on in your schools, know what's going on in your community, because that has an effect on your everyday life. And then when I was asked, I went to vote on November 7th, and I was asked by somebody if I would volunteer, and I said, yes, of course I'll volunteer. Why not? Then he asked me if I would run, and something struck me there. I spent the past 2 years talking to people that they need to get involved. And here's a point in time where somebody's asking me to do the same way I ask other people. And granted, I never wanted to be a politician. I understood, your life's in a fishbowl. People are going to criticize every single word you say, which happens all the time. Just go ahead and follow my X feed. You'll see it all the time. But if not me, then who? And we have to do something. So I said yes, and it was it was the kind of thing that jumping in. It's kind of hard at first. I was kind of reluctant until I started talking to parents,
Right.
and seeing how they felt about a lot of things, seeing how they were looking for a change, and they're just looking for somebody to just take that mantle, be willing to withstand those horrendous things, what's going to be said about you. And then I looked at what skills do I have that I could give, not lend, what I could give to this community. And I looked at the school board. Not one person on this school board has any knowledge or expertise in security, but yet they run security. Not one person on that school board has really dealt with mental health, yet I dealt with mental health with other veterans that I supported taking to the VA. I dealt with mental health with myself going overseas, because you can't go overseas. It's been over 10 decades, not coming back with scars. I dealt with mental health being a foster parent and adopting my son, which was probably the most challenging thing in the world. Trust me. Listen, if you talk that, having a kid is easy and everything, because I had 3 biological kids, and I got to my adopted son that spent 9 years in the system, and the scars that was developed there.
Right.
Imagine these kids out there that every single time they hit a certain stage, so first stage, they get ripped away from the family. The only love they learned or knew of was that. get to a group home, and then at a certain age, because they can't stay there past a certain age, get ripped out again. So any connection they made there, ripped.
Right.
Move to another one. Get to a point where they make a connection with somebody, and then ripped. So
Right.
you're dealing with kids that through their whole life, and for him 9 years, has learned that anytime I make a connection with somebody, you're not going to be here.
Right.
And then so I thought about all these
And
things.
you
And,
had some of that experience within the Fairfax City
well, Fairfax County,
school system.
yes, and I was a foster parent, and I still
Mhm.
am because the certification doesn't go away.
Right.
I'm still a foster parent with Fairfax County Public
Which we
County.
know that school board passed $10,000 for a drag show last.
Well, there's a lot of different
Last
things
summer.
that they're doing that they should not be doing.
I shouldn't be laughing about that.
We
because,
need
I
to
mean,
focus. We need to focus on the point of education.
Right.
But going back to what I was saying, where we're talking about, stepping up and doing things. And I looked at the school board, and there's nobody. There's a lot of talking heads that say great things,
Yeah.
and everybody is not putting their money where their mouth is. How many school board members right
And
now?
how much
are
money is
festival-
that?
Oh, it's a $3.6 billion that they're putting.
Right.
But how many school board members are foster care parents? How many school board members actually went out and been a big brother, big sister?
Well, how many
Yeah,
school board
none.
members are parents
And then there you go. How many school board
even
members are
teachers.
parents or
or
teachers
teachers?
or been involved in the community?
Right.
Very limited. It starts dwelling down.
Right.
And so, not saying that I have all the answers or I'm a teacher or whatnot. I actually said, yeah, I was a special operations instructor, and I actually love that song. We got sunshine
That's
on a
good.
cloud
We
day.
do have sunshine.
So,
Which is going to lead to the conservation platform.
exactly.
A little later.
Oh, well
so
played.
so how many people are actually going out and putting money where their mouth is? And me being an average person saying, listen,
I wouldn't say that you're average.
wow, I try to be humble as much as possible, but I have to look at this, like, what can I provide to the county to make it better?
Right.
And a lot of people attack me right now on, motives and different things like that. But
Were you just attacked on your auction?
yeah, I was attacked on the auction. So there
Which
was
is kind of a mute point. Right?
it's a mute point. I was attacked on the auction because a local company decided that they wanted to do something nice, which was auction out a rifle. They're a gun store, and they're a legal gun store, and they want to auction out, and some of the proceeds from the auction will go to my campaign. It ended up, because of timing with a lot of things and other commitments that they had, they couldn't get it done. Which, I'm not gonna get mad. They offered something, it didn't. And yet, the far left started attacking me, saying, "What are you doing at auction?" Regardless if they saw the flyer, they said,
And
I
Half
actually,
News NBC, my
Yes.
understanding that they were.
but on that flyer,
Involved in
I
that.
actually wrote on there, and I offered my services. I said, if you're gonna do this, I'm gonna offer training on this,
For safety.
proper training, and it's on that flyer where it says that you will be properly trained by me.
Right.
That is something that was a stipulation. Yet this left, because they keep trying to find something, has to spin this in a certain way to make me look bad, as if I want to put a bunch of guns in school and I don't care. Which, if you go on right now on Twitter and the website, you'll get a very comprehensive plan. And I really didn't want to put this out there because it's proprietary to me. This is my business. But I spoke about my ed system, early
And you were in
notification.
this meeting with Carl
Yes.
earlier in the year, my understanding.
Oh, the
There's
security and safety meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, and the
And you
security.
actually had some real solutions, which they had some of the SROs who were
Yes.
in that meeting,
Yes.
and you had some side conversations.
As
with some
side
solutions.
conversations, and a lot of the SROs and also the security staff that we are paying for actually came up and said, thank you for speaking up on this, because
Mhm.
their hands are tied, and they're tied because of bureaucracy.
Right.
And right now, our school board hired out a single source company after Uvalde to do security assessment across 212 schools.
Mhm.
We're looking at going, 2 years, and still no security assessment. A single source. I mean, I don't understand what kind of contracts they're making.
Right.
You put a contract, you pay money, which is not your money, it's taxpayer money, to make upgrades and hire this company in 2 years. You still don't have that, and they said that they're not going to make any upgrades until that assessment comes in. Which, when you start looking, our director of security for Fairfax County Public School is a 30-year veteran from the Secret Service.
Mhm.
They
Which
got
is where you came from.
Yes, and they got many veterans there. They got about 200 years worth of experience to be able to do these assessments.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, I tell a lot of people, a lot of constituents. When I'm elected and when I sit in office in 6 months, I'll have our schools secured. And if you want to learn about my foundation, how I'm going to get this done, go to my website, www.sabeforfairfax.com. It sits right there. It talks about the ed system, the concept of it. I'm willing to put it out there only because this is my concept I use. It's proprietary, but I don't care.
Mhm.
This is actually what I'm going to do. And it goes through the steps, exactly how I'm going to secure the schools.
Right.
And these are real solutions. We get a lot from our candidates out there, the incumbents,
Mhm.
talking about things, but then they shift blame. For example, at that same thing we went to 5 days ago at Mantua, where they talked at the town hall forum. They spent probably 20 minutes talking about the LEAF program,
I thought you were talking about the salad bar.
but well, Sal Bar too, but they talked about the LEAF program.
Yeah.
And during that time, there was no solutions.
Right.
It was just words that this people should do this and this people should do this. Yeah, it's a real problem. Well, you know what? I think Fairfax County is tired of just hearing the problems and hearing the circular things of pushing the blame, either pushing the blame to Richmond or pushing the blame on another section. We want real solutions.
Right.
We want it now, and the public deserves that. And that is one of the reasons why I decided to join into the race, is because we're hearing so much pandering, so much fluff,
Right.
but there's no real solutions.
Well, we heard that Carl's father was a union cop in LA, and his mother was a waitress, which he pretty much says that anytime it is a public
Mhm.
engagement, which is fine. That's his family. But you're also from California,
Yes,
San Diego.
yes.
Tell us about that.
Oh, it's
And now tell us about that and how, that is really, further influence. I've had a chance to meet you over the last uh, almost 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. I fair to say, I consider you a good friend.
yes.
I consider you a good conservative.
Thank you.
A lot of times people are going to say things. It's not going to be the exact language,
No,
right, that another conservative maybe wants to hear.
Yeah.
There are a lot of moderates, a lot of blue dogs in Fairfax County who don't know where to go right now. And that was proven in the special election where Carl lost the primary.
Yeah.
And that was proven when Carl went out and campaigned against the people's senator, Jeff
Yes.
Peterson.
yeah.
And so there are people out there in Fairfax County who they want these common sense solutions.
Yeah.
They want these common sense leaders like yourself. And so starting in San Diego.
Yeah.
When you started out in public schools.
So
How has that, looking back, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And knowing he's from LA, right?
Yeah.
Further north.
Yep.
From where you grew up. I'm just curious.
I will say
How do
this.
two people think?
I will say this. So first off,
I mean, I know one who worked
Yeah.
for the California Democratic Party.
yeah, I was never
Not you.
I was never a politician, and Carl is a fellow person from California, but we did live in two different worlds. And he could say that he was a police officer's son and a mom of a waitress.
Which is perfectly
Which is
fine.
perfectly
and
fine.
admirable.
I grew up in a place called National City. If you do the crime statistics per capita, National City has the most crime, homicide, carjackings, everything. When I talk to people from California, from San Diego, and I tell them I'm from National City, they're like, "Oh, you're from National City? Yeah, nobody goes there." And so I lived in a school. I lived through Title I schools. I didn't even know it was Title I school. I actually did not know that I went to a Title I school until I started running, and everyone started saying Title I schools, and I was like, did I go through a Title I school? And lo and behold, my school's a Title I. I thought it was natural. I thought this is the way it was. I mean, we had barbed wire around our school, and the barbed wire was pointed inboard to keep us inside. We didn't have locker rooms, so you want to carry your books 50 pounds in your backpack. We didn't have locker rooms because we had guns and we had drugs. And so when you see the movies out there of these, these movies talking about rundown schools and gangs and everything, that's actually where I grew up. But I thought it was normal. I thought it was normal that you cross over to one block, it's a different set, and then go to another block, it's a different set. We had 4 gangs rivaling all within one small area. And where our high school was, Highland Avenue, was known for drive-bys. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple people got killed right on there on a weekend.
And you see that in Springfield.
Yeah. And so,
Right in the school parking lot, the mall parking lot.
Yes.
Staffings.
and so when I grew up, I thought this was normal. But I tell you one thing, it was pushed in my head that my life was like this because other people made it so. In other words, and sad to say this, I had a resentment towards Caucasian people because it was pushing me as a minority. The reason why I don't have what they have is because they're holding me back.
Mhm.
And I live my life that way.
You're looking at Center City and you're thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, I live my life that way. But it was a slow drip of
Right.
this thought process of racism towards a group of people that didn't do anything to me, but I built this resentment.
Right.
And I didn't even know this. I mean, how can you do that to a child?
But that was growing up. Flash forward,
hmm
we have those issues today.
I know. And it was happening down in California. Now I see it here.
Right.
We're seeing here that minorities are being told they can't achieve because you're a minority, and those out there are always going to have the ability to achieve, and you can't. You limit a child, and I was one of those children. I was limited. The only reason why I got out of there was because of determination and good mentorship. I got
Right.
to a point where I said, "This, I can't live. I got to do more than this. There's more to this world than this."
Right.
And good mentors believe more in me than I believe in myself. And we don't have enough of that. What we have right now, currently, is this word equity, which is not even equity.
And this is where I was going to spin to Mary.
Yeah.
I'll let you.
So when they talk about equity, talking about equity in the sense that we want, equal for everyone. People that aren't making it should have an upper hand, or they should be given certain things to be able to achieve equal.
It's a subjective standard.
Exactly. And what I look at it on this is what it is you're telling a child like myself, you're not good enough. I'm going to have to help you. And we build a society that of kids, and I was one of those of people. I'm 48 right now. We have people still in California that are my friends that believe this,
Mhm.
that their troubles in the world, their issues, why they don't achieve is because of other race class.
Well, let me highlight, we don't have a Latino on the school board.
No, we don't.
And when you look across the advisory committees like CTE, the FLE, other different types of
Mhm.
disability, special education needs committees, there's very few representatives.
Yeah.
From the Hispanic community, and I know that you've met a lot of leaders.
Yeah.
In the last 3 to 4 months, El Salvador.
Yep.
Bolivian.
A lot of Bolivians in the
Yes.
area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, talking with these leaders and talking with these kids, they're thirsty for a change. They're thirsty to have representation. And I
Thirsty
told them,
for knowledge.
and I'm telling them that,
They want access.
yes,
To
They want
to
access, they want
opportunities.
resources, and they deserve
Right.
those things.
Right.
And I'm happy that I'm able to represent them.
Mhm.
And we get people on Twitter saying, "Hey, when you lose on November 7th, you're going to become irrelevant." And I tell a lot of people, you know what? November 7th is a day in time.
I would look at
November
it more as
8th.
November 8th.
November 8th, the work really starts because this is not going to end.
Right.
I've made so many connections with the Hispanic community, minority community, the Asian community, which I'm also part Asian, and they're hurting for people just to be their voice. And so November 8th, I mean, if a lot of people here that are very far left think that this is going to go away no matter how election goes, you're in for a rude awakening. This is just going to step it up. I am not going anywhere because I am the voice for the minority community.
Right.
And the minority community is increasing over here. Right now, I think between the Asian and the Hispanics, we're about 42%.
Actually, I wanted to make a point on that. I recently, a couple months back, actually tried to apply for a job in Fairfax County, and one of the selection procedure protocols that they put on all of their job listings is this, and I read it, I'm quoting. The population of Fairfax County is very diverse, where 39.8% of residents speak a language other than English at home: Spanish, Asian Pacific Islander, Indo-European, and others. You represent actually two
Mm-hmm.
of those demographics, and we encourage candidates bilingual in English and a foreign language to apply for this opportunity. So even the hiring practices within Fairfax County, which are usually governed by the people that are running for office,
Mm-hmm.
are actually saying that we need to hire more people like Tony.
Yeah.
So why would we skip the process of, why would we hire people that speak the language, but then not have representation that understands the resource that we're hiring?
And the dynamic's going to change. And regardless of a lot of these people that try to say that I'm irrelevant, that after November 7th, you're going to be irrelevant, I could tell you this. You can look at the stats. And I'm looking right at you guys right now. You can look at the stats. You can't change the numbers. The demographics are there. And they're on my side because I represent them. I know what they need. And their hearts are with me. So you can keep saying what you want, but sooner or later, we are going to make a change here in Fairfax, and I think that scares them.
I
Well,
can
we need-
tell you as a conservative that this is not on the Democrat Party platform.
No.
Of today. They talk it, right? But this platform has gone so far left, and it's so far on the elitist side of the spectrum
Mhm.
that they don't care about them.
Well, they want to talk about
care about-
equity and demographics, but they don't
They
actually
care-
want you to elect the equity and
They don't
demographics.
want
Yeah.
the representation.
Yeah, they
They
want
just want the vote.
they want to hire,
want
for
the
instance, they want to say that they're going to hire,
Right.
and they do, but then when it comes down to
They still
them
treat
the leadership stepping down to give equity to other leaders in the community that can actually speak to the people that they want to give equity to,
Right.
they'll fight back, or they'll play dirty tricks, or they'll do whatever they need to do. But the idea is that if you want to really truly push an equity plan, you have to provide the example, and leadership's
Yes.
not providing the example by
Well, the
trying to
equity
push out
plan
people.
that Fairfax County has is called One Fairfax. And I think this is a good spin,
Yes.
Mary, because you could become a part of this One Fairfax policy, at least from the conservation and environmental perspective of this.
And take care of my leaves.
But first, well, we need leaf collection and safety is very important.
It is. I'm a safety person.
But first,
And Public Works is all over it.
but first, people need to know who you are, Mary.
So I have a state.
How and so I'm going to be here, right, as a voting member of the Fairfax County Republican Committee. It took you a couple of times to get the endorsement, right? There were some more, stronger conservatives, including our national committee woman, who was opposed to your endorsement. At the end,
I wouldn't say opposed.
when
I
you-
don't think that she was
well, but this-
opposed, but
but this is
definitely
important,
vocally
because when you talk
adverse.
and people get to know you,
Yeah.
right, it changes. And so, who are you, Mary?
Well,
Why are you running for Soil and Water? And looking at your past, and you've done some stuff, right? On the Democratic side, I've done some stuff on the Blue Dog side.
Hey,
Why are you here?
I grew up as a progressive, so we all had something in common.
So
Exactly.
I didn't get into soil and water for political reasons, but politics was definitely not something that I was focused on. I have a law background, and I started out in real estate, land development, and land use and smart growth. And I went on to get a specialized degree from American University under Democrat Jamie Raskin for sustainability, specifically sustainable development law and policy, with an administrative background and specialization. And what that means is I know bureaucracy and I know environment.
Is that a good thing that you know bureaucracy?
I know bureaucracy and how it functions. I don't
So you know how
necessarily.
to fix it.
No, I'm not going to be so bold to say that I'm, God when it comes to administrative things. However, I am able to identify anomalies. I am able to identify things that don't work and inefficiencies, because that's the whole point of an administrative background or bureaucracy, is to try to overcome inefficiencies, but in and of itself, it creates inefficiencies. And one of the things that's happened in Fairfax County, that's happened in a lot of other counties around the country, is that, let me give you a little background. So I grew up in Fairfax County, specifically actually Providence District, which is what brings me to this podcast, is that I support Tony Savio's campaign because I was actually a Fairfax County student, K through 12, in the Providence District. I started out in school, I think it was 1985, I was in kindergarten, and I graduated high school at McLean High School in 1997. From that point, I had to adapt from digital to analog, analog to digital. Pardon me, backwards. So in that time, we saw a lot of different things change. We saw the Apple computer, like the first Apple computer. We saw the wall, the Berlin Wall fall. We saw the internet. That's a lot of adapting.
That Al Gore created.
I'm not going to go there. That's political. I'm an independent candidate.
I say that because I was a
And-
national delegate for Al Gore.
So I didn't realize this was a funny podcast.
In LA.
It's always
So,
a fun podcast.
so,
yes, this is a conversation.
like I said, I'm an
Who
independent
are you,
candidate.
right?
So
Why are you into this thing?
So like a lot of other Fairfax County residents, and many that I've spoken to still, we're all independents. We are all right in the middle. And it takes particular interests for us to move one side or the other, because we're educated voters. We actually pay attention, we're engaged. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of us, we grew up, or we are positioned at the center of power in the United States and even the Western world. And so that gives us a huge responsibility to take ownership of what we believe in.
And how do you do that as a soil and water director
So,
for Fairfax County?
as I had mentioned, I went to school for sustainability. I was in real estate, decided to go into sustainability. It was more of an attempt, like a lot of other people in this area, to gain a network in my hometown because I had gone away for school. Came back to gain a network, but then realized that sustainability is something that everybody talks about, but nobody knows how to do. There are particular rubrics for sustainability, but there are different ideas of how to apply those rubrics. And one of the things that I realized is that good governance is sort of an umbrella to all of the different rubrics. Sustainability doesn't work unless you have good governance. It requires conscientious leaders that are not going to shut down uncertain conversations. They have to be open to all conversations. They have to be open to all perspectives. They are truly the Northern Virginia independent thinker. And so I think that Northern Virginia is actually at the forefront of creating that true sustainability politician or true sustainability representative. One of the reasons that I supported Tony's campaign is that he thinks like that. He wants to hear both sides of the conversation. I know for a fact that he actually engages Democrats and Republicans. It's not about politics, it's about problem solving. And we don't have a whole lot of problems in Fairfax County, but we do have a whole lot of outstanding things to address.
We have a whole lot of division.
We have a lot of division. I don't want to go into the division because it's counterproductive.
And I can tell you this, guys.
We actually could go into division even within the party.
But I want to
on
talk more
both
about the
sides.
silence. The
But I
silence
wanna
is the
hear about your
issue.
platform.
Well, If you would be silent, I will tell you.
I would like to know about these leaves, because right now,
Leaves
we're-
are not within the Northern Virginia Soil and Water
My- my
Conservation
parking
District,
lot-
except that we want them on
Full of
native
leaves.
trees.
But what are your three issues? Soil and water.
So
What does soil and water do?
so Soil and Water is actually an advisory board, and we advise on environmental issues that impact the Northern Virginia area, particularly Fairfax County. And there are different parts of the government that handle things like the leaf removal program
Yes.
and
Leaf
our
collection.
very important.
our water treatment, things like that. A lot of
Yes.
people have come up to me and talked to me about fluoride treatment in our water, and if I support that, and also like whether or not we should be removing our leaves. And as much as I have my own particular positions on those, the leaf removal and water treatment
Very
are
important.
actually different parts of the government. However, how we govern our environmental situation here in Fairfax County does feeds into how our water is received in order to be treated and how our stormwater is drained out. If we don't do leaf collection and it creates buildup in certain areas, like particularly with drainage, then we create flood problems, and that's an issue. One of the issues that I am very passionate about is Lake Akatik. So Lake Akatik was created as a reservoir in many respects. It's actually on a floodplain. And many years ago, they actually turned it into a lake and it became a recreational area. Unfortunately, when they created the lake, they didn't design the infrastructure in a way that would prevent runoff. So a lot of the environmental area around it created a situation where a lot of runoff went into the lake. So periodically, we have to dredge the lake. Well, it's expensive. It costs money. And as much as we love our natural resources and our recreational parks, which is what Lake Akatik has become recognized as, it's actually a resource that needs to be managed properly. If we allow Lake Akatik to go without being properly managed, then it turns into an environmental problem for conservation and for the local residents. We can't just let it fill in and just let it just fill in and become a swamp, because then you're creating another floodplain situation, which affects the real estate prices in the area. But then again, it costs money to dredge the area and properly fix the infrastructure around it in order to prevent future costly maintenance. And so the idea where my platform comes in is that I take a common sense approach to conservation, that I believe in growth. I believe in real estate development. I believe in bringing our stakeholders into the conversation and seeing how our local real estate developers can help us to overcome the challenge of dredging the lake and fixing the infrastructure around it in a way that not only benefits Fairfax County from a taxpayer standpoint, being able to bring in more revenue, but also to make sure that it's a sustainable project, so that we're not stuck in the situation 20 years from now where if we actually do dredge it, we're having to beg for funding to dredge it again. So when it comes down to Fairfax County, a lot of the conservation issues are held back because of lack of funding. Everybody loves to talk about conservation and environmentalism, and this is actually what Tony was talking about earlier. People like to talk, but then when it comes to solving the problem, it's hard to solve the problem. And it's not because leaders don't want to solve the problem necessarily. It's because they don't have the funding to do it.
No, you know, let me take another stab at that. I don't think it's a matter of them not having funding. It's them not realizing, and let me go back to a little bit after my government service and everything. Small business owner, helped build a company up from a small mom and pop to mid-size, and then now small business owner myself. It's lack of knowledge on return on investment and how does it affect.
Yeah.
Right now we have
Well, lack of.
we have what's typically across the nation bureaucrats.
Right.
Bureaucrats are pandering for votes left, right, and they really have, and they also have their own activist agenda that they want to pass.
It's not so much bureaucrats, it's a political problem. It sounds like you've got
Well,
a lot of folks
Well,
that
no, I would
have
say,
a loud voice.
I would say bureaucrats,
Yeah.
because if you look at Carl Frisch Associates from 2014, 15, one of his biggest clients
Mhm.
was the Soros New Venture Fund.
Yeah.
But let me remind you
George
that we are one of the
Soros.
biggest federal. We are one of the biggest federal employers in the country. Most of the
Right.
people that are here would classify themselves under the term bureaucrat.
So, but
There's
nev-
nothing wrong
but
with
never-
somebody who works in
nevertheless,
bureaucracy,
nevertheless,
but we need to amplify the voices of people that want to solve the problems,
But-
that have the expertise to
But
do so.
nevertheless, we know as Americans, government is not the issue or solution. It's the problem. Hence, Ronald
Right.
Reagan. I'm a
Right.
Ronald Reagan conservative, and I love that quote. Government ruins everything, and it's because they take their expertise to such a level that they want to pass their certain activism, not look at it as a business. The greatest thing about America is we look at things in capitalism. What's my return on investment? As taxpayer, I'm putting money into conservation. I'm putting money into your lake. I'm putting money into the LEAF program. I'm putting money into this. What's my return on investment? I'll tell you what the return on investment is. You're gonna have a lake that's clean, that's not doesn't have to be dredged. You're gonna have leaves that are gone. That's not gonna be causing any
No
accidents,
Safety issues.
safety issues. And what we do is we don't focus on that because everyone has their own particular agenda. Because nobody could tell me why.
Well,
We need to put, hold on, we need to put
Mhm.
millions upon millions of dollars of changing our buses right now from diesel to clean air. Because they're already, this Fairfax County Public School has already allocated money to that project. Now, let me tell you this.
But have you had the science come in? Because I remember Carl mentioning that we now have Tesla buses.
Yeah, well, here's the thing.
So-
You
so-
say you're going to save money, but how
But
much
here's-
infrastructure you got to pay?
But what about the science?
Wait,
of
you
it?
guys are missing a big point. We were talking about bureaucracy at the beginning of this, right? The problem with bureaucracy is a lack of understanding of how to manage human resources. Yes, bureaucracy
Right.
in government have gotten too big, but there are a ton of people that are employed by the government that have gifts that have not been tapped yet. The idea, the one thing that's missing especially when it comes to big government, and I know you're talking about big government here, the one thing that's missing
Big government is not the
is the
solution.
accountability, the oversight, and the accountability aspect.
So
There is
but-
a lack of that, and one of the things I see is that if you try to just fire a bunch of people, reduce government, you're creating a void because there
But-
is a human resource.
but
there that
how's
is so
it
valuable.
create a void when we have
Why would you
So-
fire
hold
somebody
on,
unless you know their
hold on,
full
hold on.
potential?
why would we not do that, reduce down when we have school administrators, the top 20 make about $6.5 million.
Why
Hold
not?
on, hold
Why
on.
not do a
How much-
sustainability audit,
Hold on,
a human
hold on,
resource
hold on.
How much does
sustainability
the
audit?
Secretary of Education make
Oh,
as a
sec-
cabinet member? I'm
Well,
just
that's
curious.
that's
you
another
want to know how
problem.
much it makes?
I'm just curious.
Inflated salaries. That's
174,000,
And how much does the superintendent of Fairfax County make?
380.
Let me
and
ask.
how much of that could be
$1,000.
reallocated to people with
So
with
hold on.
capabilities
So those
within
are
the
just-
system
Those are
that could
just
do
two-
hold on.
multiple
Those are
things?
just two salary comparisons, let alone a complete Department of Education.
Well, that goes back to oversight and accountability.
what I'm
Why are they making so much
So-
Why
money?
is the
so-
federal government so involved in education?
so what else?
And why?
And yet, why is our local bureaucracy so uninvolved in local, very controversial issues that are affecting every family?
So, but what I'm saying is, when we start having, we talked about bureaucracy, and I talk big time about bureaucracy because I see it. I saw it from the government side, I saw it on the civilian side, and I'm seeing it now running for school board. Nobody could justify. Nobody could justify to me. Nobody could justify to me why a superintendent. And you know what their justification is? The surrounding superintendents are making.
11
compliment.
assistant
You know why I said?
superintendents
You know why I said
are
to them?
making over $2 million.
You know what I said to them? I said, well, they need to be slashed too.
Well, and accountability and oversight would actually identify where there are shortfalls, and
Audits.
there are clearly shortfalls in the system. In the audits you were talking about, sustainability. One of the elements of sustainability that is so important is a constant oversight and accountability mechanism. That's where the good governance part of
That's where the
sustainability
board
comes
of
in.
supervisors comes in as well.
And the board of
and
supervisors.
the idea
And
is
that's why
that
we need
if
Brian
you
Murphy, right? And we need to make sure that
We-
and when you get it, wait, let me give
we
you a
need,
sense.
what we need to do is do exactly what I said. We need to do a full audit.
Yes.
We need to do a full audit of Fairfax
Budget
County
and curriculum.
public schools because they take 52% of this county's budget. The other 48% that's sitting there needs to do a full audit too for accountability. Every dollar in Fairfax County needs to be accounted for. If you can't account for it, or you don't want to tell the public that, You got some answers. You got to speak to this because there's no reason why we are not good stewards of the people's money.
But
And that is exactly what's happening because nobody could tell me. And I have people from the left defend, but their defense of it is ridiculous. There's no defense to it. They can't not tell me why Miss Reed makes $380,000 when the lunch
And it's not
staff
just
makes
her.
$15,000.
But
She
listen,
got
that's a
40
lack of no.
officers, makes
But listen
over
to me. That's a
$200.
lack of accountability and oversight. If we had a proper accountability and oversight, which is what leads into good governance, we would be able to check those issues at the get go. But the idea of sustainability, and it's not just environmental. It comes down to
But you're not gonna-
economic. It comes down to environmental. It comes down to like resource management.
But you're not going to get that
We have
if you have a
somebody-
bureaucracy.
I know, but here's the thing: behind the bureaucracy are people, individuals, residents, voters.
You know what's behind a
And
bureaucracy?
each of those people, this is one thing I know about Fairfax County because I was born and bred here. I have blood in this soil, okay?
Literally in the soil.
Literally in the soil, all right? I
You know what?
stuffed a knee or two
I-
as in the
Mhm.
80s, okay, on my bike. And I'm sure I've cut myself gardening 100 times, okay?
I can't think of a
I
better
kind of
campaign.
gumped my way through the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation website trying to create a rain garden, and I did it, but I bled, okay? But my point is this, is that people that live here, that have been here for a long time, they want to be useful. They want to be valuable. They consider themselves assets to the community. They're very involved. The reason there's so many independent voters here is because they take responsibility
Yeah,
for
but
their
you-
thoughts and their actions.
But you're
Yeah.
saying behind the bureaucracy, there's people that support
But
that.
part of that bureaucracy are residents that consider themselves
Well, so
See, I have-
independent.
I
So the
have-
idea is
you
that
have some questions.
we need
But
part of
then-
over.
I
But
mean-
let me finish this. Part of oversight and accountability is listening to your resources, listening to the bureaucracy,
But
as
you
you
don't
call
have the
them.
resources if you don't have an independent audit.
The audit is important,
So
and what you
first
do,
you
but
need-
the
first
audit
you need
shouldn't
a
be with this mindset of cutting. The audit
No,
should be
no,
more
no,
of
listen.
No,
How-
not at all.
what do we take from the resources we have,
Right.
and what do you see as ways to fix problems within the system? Because if there's anybody who's the most valuable asset,
I-
it's a bureaucrat that's
I
been
would, I would tell you this.
utilized.
I will
And
tell you this. I will tell you
I
this.
would say it's been the superintendent before.
Well, and I guarantee you there's a
But-
ton of
Bravery.
teachers and administrators,
But-
even at Gatehouse,
Who-
that probably have great ideas on how to make her job more efficient and
Right.
help to get more money
I-
to the
but-
That's
teachers.
why you need the.
but I would-
That's where
independent
But,
sustainability
but here's
comes in.
the thing. I will tell you this. Talking with a lot of people, talking for myself, because I'm not a politician,
audit. Well, and talking
know,
from common
and
sense.
talk from common sense. When you look at bureaucracy, big government, because this is what we have in Fairfax County, where regardless if it's,
Big
if it's
government.
Fairfax Public Schools or if it's the county, we have big government. And the ones that believe so much into that are the ones that are disconnected with reality. Because here's the thing,
Right.
the ones that are hit most on this are the minority community. They're paying taxes and not seeing a return on investment. The ones that are able to say, "Oh, just continue out. It's all right."
Well,
if-
that's where
it's
the
all
audit
right
comes
if
in.
Miss Reed
Well,
makes.
but-
Hold on. Hear me out.
Yeah.
It's all right if Miss Reed makes 380,000 because guess what? I make about 250. Combined, we probably make like 500.
Well, that's where
But
the
tell- but tell
oversight
them-
comes in.
hold on,
The audit and the
tell that-
oversight.
Tony,
Tell
I
them-
don't think it's appropriate. And again, I've had conversations with Dr. Reed and I respect her. But I don't think it's appropriate that we have a superintendent in Fairfax County Public Schools who makes only $20,000 less
than the
than
president.
the president of the United States, who you protected.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
want to hear more about Barbara.
Well,
Bush's,
what's inappropriate about
Yeah.
that?
That was
It's that- no, no,
fantastic.
wait,
Because we got Barbara Bush's cookies.
I gotta
right?
I gotta plug for
Was
conservation.
this-
Now listen, how is it that we're underfunded and we have not enough resources in conservation when you have Dr. Reed and other folks on the school board pushing for all these equity and environmental
Because it's smoke
policies?
and mirrors.
Yeah.
But that's my point, is that they're talking a good game and they're riding on the coattails of environmental conservation, and they're saying, oh, we're so equitable and environmentally sustainable, and yet they won't even fund the program or put somebody who knows how to fund the
Or
program
put a soil
on the JET
and
committee.
Water director on the jet.
JET, exactly.
So,
So-
listen, we could talk about this all
We
day
got
It's
long.
lip
questions
service, yeah.
We definitely got some questions.
And so I've got to do
Got
this moderating.
9 comments here.
I'd rather just talk for another 3 hours. Right? Because we've got a lot of problems.
Yeah, we got it.
We
all.
haven't even started
They're not
talking about-
problems, they're just solutions waiting to happen.
No, we haven't even started talking about fentanyl.
No.
right?
Okay,
We haven't even started talking about mental
Go,
health
go ahead.
awareness.
Go ahead.
So in reference, to the superintendent who makes $20,000 less than the president, Mr. Carl Frisch did say that the justification of that is they wanted to hire a quote unquote, the best in the nation. And obviously the best in the nation, therefore, would be paid that much. So if she is the best in the nation, can you tell me where does FCPS stand in the nation as, you know, is it even in the top 10?
I will tell you this, did the research, the district sits at 878 in the nation, which someone said, we're top 10. I said, well, or we're number one. I said, well, I guess if you are 878 and that's your litmus test of number one, I guess you're right. Virginia sits at 11th in the nation. And I look at return on investment. You know, I'm a businessman now. You know, every money in, every dollar I look at it from a profit and loss, right? Profit is my return on investment, what the education is looking like, how much, what's coming out, how prepared are our kids coming out, right? And then the loss,
who decides that rubric though on who's the best in the nation? Who's deciding this?
it's US News is one
Well,
of
she
them.
came from Washington.
No, but who's
Hold on,
looking at the candidate and saying this person's the
But
best
she
in the
came
nation?
from Washington
Is it
State.
subjective?
Well, hold on.
Everything's
Look at the
subjective.
recruitment process on how she wasn't even the favorite for a lot of different groups in Fairfax County. Again, I'm not going to sit here and talk negative about Dr. Reed. I've had conversations with her. I've talked to her about Governor Youngkin's model policy. And I
Mhm.
told her she got duped by thinking that parent rights and Virginia code shouldn't be in student rights and responsibilities. Because they're saying, well, there's federal law. We don't have to recognize state law. But when it's convenient for a board, they can say, well, we have to recognize state law.
Yeah.
Because that's important, because human rights, the Virginia Human Rights Commission, that's very important. So we need to recognize that Virginia code.
Mhm.
But when it's not convenient, right, when you have a governor who I think has some very good model policy and legislation that compromises
Mhm.
with the different communities. And I would like to get on that topic before we end tonight.
Yeah.
When you look at Dr. Reed, she's getting 50, 70,000 less than superintendents in New York City.
Mhm.
The population is less here than it is in New York City. She came from Washington State, and she fully is on board and able to influence this policy of progressivism. In fact, that has been her champion product and project.
Has she
Has
always
been
been a progressive though,
the-
as far as her career goes? I mean, or is this a new
Well,
development?
this is a question that we have to ask.
And does that have to do with the funding?
And this goes back to the influence.
Yeah.
Right. This goes back to the audits, the independent audits, and the oversight, and the bureaucracy. Right. She works for the board.
Exactly.
The board, the school board, works for us.
Yes.
Right. We're the taxpayers.
Mhm.
We're the parents. Right.
Mhm.
Maybe soon to be parent. Parent.
Yeah.
Dog parent.
Parent, dog parent, right? But even if you look at the taxpayers, the real estate tax
Mhm.
invests over 50% into education in Fairfax County. So it doesn't matter if you're not a parent, you can be a taxpayer, you're still invested.
Everyone's
You talk
invested.
about ROI.
Mhm.
Well, even teachers.
Yeah,
Don't
so-
forget about the teachers. They're
so-
another part of this equation
So
here.
when we look at
Well,
the
they're parents.
And as an advisory
As
board,
teachers who are parents.
as somebody who's running for an advisory board, we're essentially a county board that is that puts ourselves in a position of being teachers of conservation to the entire county.
Yeah.
So don't forget the
So,
teachers.
so going back to the question, I think it's unanimous. And I'm just going to say
oh, it's unanimous.
she's paid too much.
She's paid way too much, and I will put on record that when I get on that board, I will go through her contract. I will look at what a reasonable rate is going to be based upon other jobs. And it's not based upon education. We see inflated educational rates in colleges, in other school boards, and I'm not doing that. I'm doing it off of a business. If I was going to hire a CEO to run my company, me being
Right.
on the board
Right.
of investors and all the shareholders as a county, I'm looking at who am I hiring as a CEO
Right.
and how much are they worth for that? And that's
Well,
it.
but that, and that, well, here's,
Five questions.
well,
No,
and
that's
but
it.
let me just say this,
Right.
this is important, that as a CEO in a free market, you have to consider the potential, and you got to understand, because you mentioned that Dr. Reed works for the school board and it answers to them, her potential under 380,000, she was hired as the best in the nation. She may be getting stifled because of what the board is forcing her to fall into.
Well,
She
I
may
think
not be
the
able
teachers
to
and staff are
use her
reflecting
entire
market.
potential.
I
And you got to consider that if you're going to be a true.
I highly doubt that.
successful
No, hold on.
CEO.
Listen, I highly doubt that when she made a comment about the 88% that said we don't want gender studies between 4th to 8th grade, and she said the minority does not
The
dictate what we
majority.
do, or majority. I'm sorry, majority does not dictate what I do. She didn't have to make that comment, and when she makes that
And
comment,
that's a,
Yeah.
it's political.
well, and that goes on the
and
board.
Day
right?
one, it's day one. I'm going to go through. It's going to be a comparable a rate, and I'm looking at it's going to be around 200,000. 180,000 is going to go away. Next question.
But let me share one story real quick, where Dr. Reed comes from. I have a friend, he ran for Congress, 2022, very quickly. I'm not gonna go into names, out of respect for privacy. He was introduced to his son with a different pronoun and a different biological belief. The teachers and the staff introduced my friend, this individual, to his son as a female. And that's where Dr. Reed comes from.
Yeah.
She comes from that mindset. And that's exactly, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what they wanted. They wanted a progressive superintendent who could keep continuing this strategy of one Fairfax policy and continue to, implement all these different initiatives and activities that all revolve around the grand scheme of George Soros.
All right. So next question.
Okay, so we have here a question about, the community is learning about the one free rate pool that Paul Frisch and FCPS support. Would you guys please share some comments? And I do understand that it is not the topic of this episode, but some initial comments will be welcome.
All right. So let's keep this into 2 minutes because this could spin into another hour. So when you start looking at this one free rape rule, where this board and this has tried to push the concept that we are going to give a pass to any allegation, it's the most disgusting thing in the world. It's taking law enforcement out of the mix. This board and these administrators are not law enforcement. They don't do an investigation. Their job is to report. The job of law enforcement is to take that information, do the due diligence, and see if there's any criminal activity that happened. When you start intervening in law enforcement and making decisions to prevent law enforcement doing its duty, we have a breakdown of our community, we have a breakdown of our county. And it's appalling to hear anything like that. It takes the power away from law enforcement and it puts us in a bad situation. All right, what say you guys? I told you what my feeling from the law enforcement side.
Well, I want to thank the governor, Glenn Youngkin. He provided a pardon for Scott Smith,
Yes.
who witnessed this firsthand.
Typically, that's
In
one
Loudoun
free
County.
rate because they had an allegation and they moved the kid.
And I know we haven't had a chance to talk about other issues. Another good friend, who I think is a great activist. I have to mention her name.
Go ahead.
Stacey Langton.
Okay, go ahead. I have no problem with Stacey.
She is phenomenal.
I have no problem with Stacey at all.
And she recently had put out a post within her network about yet another incident.
Yep.
In Alexandria.
Yep.
Where there was a teacher that exposed himself to minors and was actually tried and found guilty. I don't know if he's found guilty yet for child porn and sex trafficking.
Can I actually make a point about this?
And so you're gonna be next. I just want to say that I think it's just only a matter of time before we get, unfortunately, the same type of situation that we saw in Loudoun County in Fairfax. Not to say that it already hasn't happened, right? We don't want it to happen. We hear rumors. I hear rumors of abortions happening in middle school and high school, right? But because of the way that this cult society is in Fairfax County, nobody wants to speak up.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody wants to talk. Understandably, it's a very close knit network.
Yeah.
Right? If you talk, you get canceled.
Yeah.
Right? Look at me. I started out this thing
Listen,
22, right? And you know, you say the wrong thing, people want to cancel.
Well, but there's more to it, and that's where the
And-
lawyer comes in, is
but
that
now-
there's a
now-
liability issue. And I think what's happening is a lot of these school board candidates, or not candidates, but incumbents, we're getting into a situation where these boards are being represented by lawyers
Right.
who are dictating how these reports are being handled. And so the school board has its own legal interests in mind. And so what's happening is you've got these non-elected officials, or you've got these elected officials delegating authority on how to handle the victims of these reports. And they're violating like trauma-informed network rules or protocols that have been adopted by Fairfax County. You've got essentially a bunch of lawyers that are protecting the liability of the board members, and the board members are put in this position where they don't want to say anything, and they're not going to say anything, and they can't even develop policies that use certain wording to fix the issue. So it gets further pushed under the rug, and
but
when that
ultimately,
happens, you've got a bunch of lawyers essentially
but-
acting as the school board.
but ultimately, the power lies within the elected official, with is the school board,
The power
not-
lies in the people that
not-
elect the officials.
not the lawyers. The lawyers
Yeah,
work
lawyers don't run
for-
the schools.
public school.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And when I'm on that board, and if I have a lawyer that's telling me how to dictate certain policies, I can say to them, let me dictate how you go get ahead and head over to the unemployment line, because that's where you're going to be. You're there for legal advice, not for policy making. The school board is there for policy making based upon their constituents and what they want.
Right.
And what we have in that example is the exact opposite. You're looking at lawyers looking at their best interest because it's a money thing. You know what? The two things I always said to people, and sad to say that I'm actually one of them, is you need to watch out for two type of people: politicians and lawyers. Sad to say that a lot of politicians are lawyers,
I'm both.
and she's both. So you always have to
I'm
watch
just
out.
oil and water.
Well, Carl Frisch isn't a lawyer.
He's a,
probably act
but he's a politician.
like it.
So that is
Any other questions?
what we got to watch out. The lawyers cannot dictate anything.
This question is for Mr. Jeff Hoffman.
Okay.
Okay.
What is the connection between Carl Fritz and Soros?
Oh
Oh my God. Do we have about 10 hours?
Wow.
I don't know. We have enough time for this. Go ahead. Yep. 2 minutes.
So I think
Break
it
it
would
down.
be fair for Team Savio to release some background and research that we've done on the connection between Soros and Carl. There are three, I guess I would say, major people: George Soros, John Stryker, and Hans-Jörg Wyss. And all of them are billionaires. All of them have been part of this whole holistic strategy for the progressive, activities and initiatives that we've seen. Specifically with Stryker, he has been wanting to. You could consider him the father of the transgender movement. Now, I don't have any problem with transgender people, but when you have these issues and this influence happening in our elementary schools and middle schools, and even early on in high schools, that's to me, especially when you have a policy in a Fairfax County public school system that trains teachers and staff that they don't have to notify parents of certain areas. Like if a child decides that they want a different pronoun, they actually did training last summer in Fairfax County Public Schools where they were advised, they were actually quizzed that the answer was no, they don't have to notify the parents. Now, I'm not going to create a conspiracy theory because we haven't seen the facts. We don't have that many people talking about what's going on in the schools, but we do have the facts on that actual training.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry to interrupt. How is it that as folks that are elected to political office, we have to inform the voter of everything we do. But then these school administrators don't have to inform the parent of what happens with their
No.
kids.
You know,
They're elected officials, the parents are voters. So how does that work?
because it's like a gladiator arena.
So it's just free for
The-
all.
We're the peasants that are watching the games.
The problem,
right?
the
And
problem.
Sorry,
they're-
someone wanted
they're making
chiming
the
in to try to
policy.
understand.
No,
But I mean, if you wanted an answer to this question, you can't just answer it in one session. We've got the facts. As one example, Carl Frisch Associates was founded in 2014, 2015. One of his biggest clients was a big fund that George Soros had donated and contributed billions into one of his funds. The Hansborg Vist is interconnected within the George Soros funding. He was on the Vist Foundation. Carl Frisch was on the Vist Foundation, and there's just too many moving parts to explain it all right here. But we will publish something after this podcast that will show and provide you some of the facts and give you more background on where we see some of the connections between Carl and George Soros.
Nice, good. Next
Which
question.
includes campaign contributions up to $5,000 in 2019 when he ran.
Mr. Jeff Hoffman seems to be very popular and loved by people that are watching. So another question for him is, what is parents' right for common sense schools?
I think this is a question for all of us up here, especially Tony and I. We're parents,
Yeah.
right?
So
And actually, this leads me to a really good question that I actually wanted to ask you, Tony,
go ahead.
because it's been a little contentious.
Yeah.
Right? And NBC actually asked you about the same thing.
Yeah.
And I had a question about it in a school board meeting in the past. And it was, hey, I'm a parent, right? My child, has feelings. They don't necessarily know, if maybe they should be the biological, setup that they were born to be. I'm a parent. Should you be able to tell me what to do? And I looked at them and I'm like, no,
Exactly.
right? The
Exactly.
whole point is you're involved in the process.
And that is
And
where
this is where the question
Yeah.
after this becomes, the comment that you make about gender studies, right? We're not looking at elementary school, middle school, in integrating gender studies into a family life education blended sex curriculum, which is what they want, right? They want to confuse the children. That's kind of stage one, confuse the children.
Yep.
My whole point, and just let me be very clear, parent rights means the parent is involved in the decisions for our children. In my case, I have a few boys. I don't like to be exact in public forums, but I have 3 boys. And, if there are issues and the staff or teachers feel they need to take it upon themselves, and I've never had an experience where they haven't taken something independently, they talk to the parents. And that's why over the last 2 years, I have advocated for an absolute simple compromise, and that is Virginia Code 1-240-1, parent rights. It's one paragraph, and all it says is parents have rights to our kids. Parents have rights to our kids' upbringing. Parents have rights to our kids to teach them the values that we want our children to have. And that could be ethnic.
Well, there's
And
implied
that's
powers.
cultural.
There's actually implied powers in the Constitution of privacy that are supposed to encompass that.
And that's even better.
But we've gotten to the point where we actually need to be specific because people are pretending
Right.
suddenly, people who came from the civil rights movement, who were brought up in that legacy, are pretending suddenly not to know
But the bottom
about
line
the
is,
implied powers in the Constitution. We have
line
to
is,
codify it now.
if you talk to voters on an everyday basis, right? You knock on their door and you say, you know what? Do you want to be involved in your child's schooling? Do you want to be involved in your
I
child's
would.
upbringing? What parent is going to say no?
So let me talk a little bit
And so
about
this,
this.
I'm going to hand this off to you.
So when we start looking at parent rights, and we start looking at our society, we have a society that's going towards secular worldview. We start looking at religion, secular worldview, secularism. It has become a religion within itself. And we start saying that, hey, separation of religion from schools and everything. But if you start looking at studies, secularism is now defined as a religious movement because it's kind of the opposite, whether it's independent, individual person, everything. And so when you start introducing these things, you say, it's about independence and free thinking, and they can think for themselves. And I've heard, children aren't property. It goes away from the actual fundamental teaching, which is actually family values and tradition. So we were replacing saying don't want religion in schools, but yet you're putting in a new pseudo religion, which is secularism in there. And I challenge anybody that wants to go head toe to toe on me and talk that and say that secularism is not a religious movement. I'll be more than happy to have you right here and we can discuss this, because it is. It's a fundamental movement opposite of anything that deals with religion. It's an actual religious movement saying I'm a secular.
It's actually a
more-
First Amendment ideology that
it's-
is covered under the same protections
But
as
it's-
religious
But
ideology.
It is.
But this
it
is where the
But-
common sense comes into play.
But it's trying to
But let me
supplant.
go. But let me
not
go
look at
back.
the- Let's not look at the law, right? Let's
Let's
just
go.
imagine
But the law
look at the
governs
moral
everything.
your father,
aspect. Yeah.
right? I'm a father, right? When you're deciding after you maybe date for a while and
Mhm.
you're married.
Yeah.
Let's have kids.
So yeah, it
Right?
goes
And
into
how
moral
many
aspect.
times do you hear the conversation? Oh, I'd love to have a son.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can.
Mhm.
we can't necessarily, control that. But
So this goes
I mean,
into the
it's-
moral aspect of things.
Where does
And-
it stop with
and-
with the school board?
Hold on.
Like, no, when the government, so the school board is part of the government, and the people that are governed by the school board are agents of our governing process.
Mhm.
If parents don't have, and we've gotten to the point where we have to codify it, where if parents don't have a codified right to take care of their kids, then what's stopping like the school or the Department of Education or the State Department of Education coming in when you decide that you want to have kids, whether or not you have to get genetic studies, and if it turns out to be a girl, you're
well,
not allowed to have a kid.
well,
Like, are we really heading towards like a China approach here?
let's
The reason it has to do with protections,
but,
and if
but
we
let
have
me
to codify
but
it,
let me go
because it's a slippery slope
let me take a
argument.
step back. I'm not going to go that far as saying that kind of stuff.
But that's why it's important
But
to
hold on.
protect.
But we got to take in context what the here and now.
But think of it in terms of
So-
common sense.
So when we start looking at common sense and we start looking at family tradition, the best way to push off an activist movement is to separate people, especially separate people from faith. If I could take you away from faith, that means I can tell you what your faith should be. And I could redesign everything towards that.
It's not
Now,
activism,
one
it's
thing-
authoritarianism.
hold on. So what-
Activism is written in their constitution. It's a right.
But just let me talk. Let me continue talking. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to get into the weeds,
I think you meant authoritarianism
hold on.
or
But you're
over.
But Mary, you're
Yeah.
going into weeds of certain words, but I'm trying to break it down into
But they're
layman's
terms of art.
because
Very
I'm
simple
I am
common
like
sense.
an everyday person. I'm a very simple person, and I look at it from very simple terms, right? When we start looking at the breakdown of families, it breaks when you start breaking down a family, then you're able to gain more control because a army divided is weaker than an army united.
Right.
And so if I want to start an influence campaign and go back to my time in the agency, what I need to do is first start a division between, and I need to break down and destroy any roots that connect people, any bond.
Right.
Once I'm able to get rid of those bonds, then I'm able to influence people in a certain way, because now their bond is not to each other, the bond is now to me.
Right.
And my movement and my agenda, which they don't know what my agenda is, but I like to paint in a nice little box and wrap it up as
Right.
something that is fantastic.
So just
for
to
them, which is
clarify, you're saying
individualism.
if you were one of these groups that are trying to confiscate the individual's thoughts, you're saying you as an example. If I
Yeah.
Well, and I think your guest speaker for your campaign kickoff, Jijan Van Fleet,
was phenomenal. on
Actually, she explained that perfectly.
Exactly. That's
of
why.
what's going on with,
Yeah.
with our schools.
That's why, without me even asking her, she came and she
Right.
endorsed me on that because my mentality, what I'm seeing, is the same that she saw
Mhm.
in communist China.
Right.
And it's the breakdown of family. It's a breakdown of individual where now they rely on the state telling them what is what,
Right.
and not on faith. If you look, China, they persecute any people that are Christians. They're persecuting out there, and why? Because they're believing in something bigger than the
And
government.
you're seeing that now at the federal level because you have the Biden administration, which is now looking at the EEOC to create misgendering.
Oh, of course,
policy.
they're doing it. I mean, I can
When
tell
it
you one
started-
thing in the
So
Marine
it's-
Corps.
But it started in one Fairfax.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you in the
When
now-
it's the cultural revolution, the color revolution
now-
aspect, the
But now you're
genes, yeah.
starting to see the influence at the national level.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Of somebody like Carl Frisch.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the question of George Soros. Carl Frisch was the co-chair for the Biden administration's LGBTQ plus strategy and rollout.
And like I said, that could be a
new
whole nother
activities and
segment.
initiatives. Entirely new segment.
Yeah, that's our
Right?
new segment.
But what you're seeing that has happened locally in Fairfax County Public Schools, right? Not that misgendering at the kindergarten level.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's ridiculous.
I'm more
And-
concerned with the
and-
lawyers and how, I remember
Right.
there was a Law Enforcement Today article that came out recently that talked about how the lawyers have really come in. We were talking about that earlier, and they're defending this behavior and how and actually speaking of Carl Frisch, I think he worked with Media Matters or something, and how
Media matters.
is it Media Matters?
Mhm.
He actually
Yeah,
he got
Eric-
caught with a memo where he actually said use lawyers to intimidate his
Fox
opponents.
News.
Yeah, and I
And
think
and you're seeing that with the school board, and that's something that I found really disturbing because
He was
and as
on
a
the House-
lawyer, I know that our job we're supposed to be
he was on the House Ethics Committee as well. So that's his.
that's,
and I think
Wow.
Wikipedia will put that article up on the podcast.
I think it was Law
But
Enforcement Today.
let's go to our next, and we'll pop it up on there, everybody. So let's go to our next question.
Okay, your next question, and it will be the last one,
Okay.
is that what is your opinion about the way that the moderators of the Mantua Citizens Association conducted the Providence Town Hall last week or earlier?
Is that to me since I was on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I respect everyone with the Mantua citizen community, their board. I respect everything they did. They try to put something together, but it was clearly obvious that every single question that was posed to the school board for Providence, I went first. And it allows a situation where I could not rebut anything that Carl said. To the point where on the last closing, I physically had to make a motion that, okay, is enough is enough. It needs to go on the other side.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to say there's any conspiracy there or anything, but it was definitely set up to a point where it was
It's political.
political favoring. I mean, when you're seeing every other candidate flip-flopping. So Brian Murphy, Palachuk had a question, and then Brian Murphy had. And when it came back to him, Brian Murphy had a question, the first, and then Palachuk took the second shot at the question. It was happening for every single candidate except when it got to myself and Carl. And I'm not saying anything about that. What I wanted everyone to understand that everything that about me and what I want to take care of for Fairfax County, especially public school, deals with real issues. And, I don't need to go on the offense against Carl. I think there's a lot of things where he lies politically that not just myself, but a lot of people question motives. But if we were going to have a true fair town hall forum, there's definitely an advantageous position when you are constantly going after the person that talks on a question, and then there's no rebuttal to it.
Right.
And so that I
So it
think
wasn't a true
or
debate.
opportunity.
It
Yeah.
was a public forum.
it was a public forum, but it wasn't true in the
Right.
sense that that really resounded. And on top of that, some of the questions there You know, we didn't talk about some concrete questions, especially for our schools. Did we talk about school safety? Did we talk about what we're going to do? Did we talk about, you know, I know that I had to interject the imbalance within the pay with the gatehouse administrators and the teachers. Teachers
Yeah.
sitting at 77,000 on average.
Right.
You know, food service workers making 15,000 on average. Bus drivers making 38,000 on average. Who can live off of 15,000 on average here in Fairfax County?
Right.
Nobody can. But yet we have administrators making more than our congressmen and senators in the United States.
Right.
And everyone tells me, you know, it's justified. So it's more justified than the senator of Virginia, Tim Kaine.
Right.
Tim Kaine makes less than that, well, on paper salary. I mean, I'm sure there's other.
Well,
And he
no,
has to pay his staff
no,
too,
yeah.
doesn't he? Out of his
If you-
own.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
look at General Assembly, they get paid far less than
Yes.
school board members.
And-
House of Delegates and State Senate.
So you start
Well, but the
looking.
teachers are the ones that are getting completely like short-sighted on this whole
So
situation.
what I never thought in a million years is I'm sitting here defending issues that was ingrained in me growing up in progressive California that are democratic issues that they are defending. Democrats supposedly are supposed to be for the small people. Democrats are supposedly for the blue collar workers that are making minimum wage and trying to get their wages up. But yet we have a complete reversal. I kind of feel like I'm in bizarre world when I get attacked. That I'm a
That's-
conservative
that's the
and I'm
left.
fighting for
Yeah, that's left.
the
progressive.
teachers. I'm fighting for the food
party
service
has
worker.
changed.
And-
Party has
and-
changed.
And so it's so odd hearing that. And then
Yeah.
for the community to in this town forum to be to place the mic every single time in front of me, you know, to me in front of Carl, I mean, it was a disservice. I think it really didn't lend to having a real conversation. You know, I know that you know, there was one of multiple times I said it for myself and Carl debate, but I think now is the time where we're able to have a conversation between a real debate between myself and just Carl to really talk about a lot of issues. And we're talking about real, you know, what Biden likes to say, real issues that people say around the kitchen table.
Right.
And that's what people care about.
Yeah.
People want to know where their money's going. They
Young
want to know the
kids.
return on
Yeah.
invention.
Young kids.
Yeah. They want to know about the leaves that are on the ground. They're not
Right.
getting picked up. You know, so yeah, I was honored to be there. But then again, on the flip side, I think it was completely mishandled, and it clearly showed that there was a step of
Yeah.
dodging for them not to allow me to speak upon whatever Carl would say.
Hey, it's
I
not
do have
it's not
a-
just happening to you. I'll tell you what. I've had a very interesting run.
I do
with
have an
some of the liberals.
observation from
so-
that man to a public forum. Number one, the person to the left of me for soil and water wasn't invited.
And they talk about leaves.
And this is a little more personal. It started,
Were those leaves on native trees?
yeah. So this
they popping up.
this started 2.5 years ago. One of the moderators on that public forum nominated me for one of the advisory committees for the Fairfax County Public Schools, specifically for CTE.
Mhm.
But this is what they do to conservatives, and this is why the silent majority, us, hardworking conservatives, need to stand up. And at a minimum, for this year, we need to go vote November 7th.
I
And
think
the weather-
independents are
The
also
weather's going to be sunny,
there too.
and it's just going to be a beautiful day for a one-day vote on November 7th. But I will tell you, when they learned that I was interested potentially in running for school board, they kicked out my nomination because they realized, oh, wow, we can't actually have somebody on an advisory council who's fully qualified,
Mhm.
right? I was interviewed in the UK.
Yeah.
I wasn't even here during COVID. I wasn't even here during everything that was going on with the heroic efforts that Sandra was leading for the recall efforts. And by the way, November 8th, depending on any kind of results, the recall is on immediately.
Yeah.
Day one. Your day one,
Yeah.
right, is getting ready for the oath.
Yeah.
But if we have other seats, right, unfortunately, that we might not be able to take over, the recall is on from day one, and it'll be for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and
Until
work
the next
starts.
election. So this isn't done just on November 7th, but we can get it done November 7th by getting everybody out, getting everybody out to vote. And there are politics in this county, they're dirty, and they are unfair, and conservatives we're not used to that. We're not used to 45 days of voting. It's unheard of. But we have to deal with what we're dealing with right now, and it's not constitutional.
Any more questions? I think that's one popped up. Oh, we got one more question.
One more yeah. No, we have one more question.
Nope. No
Keep
more
going.
questions.
Okay, so we went through a lot of different things, and I thank our guest here, Jeff and Mary, to talk about some real issues. And I kind of want to wrap it up real fast. That we talked about a lot of negative, but the positive that comes in effect is November 7th, in less than a week. Actually, it's a week. We have a choice, and we can make that choice. Now, we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but it's working with the parents, working with the teachers. When I get told, I was never an educator, how can I serve on the school board?
I was never an educator.
Exactly. But the point is, I know I'm not an educator, but I know where the subject matter experts are. They're your women and men every day that are in the schools helping your kids, not gatehouse, not the administrators, not the school board. I promise you this, and when I get on that school board, the people that are going to be leading the charge of creating curriculum are going to be the teachers on the front line. The teachers are our backbone. The school staff are our backbone. And I want to make sure I give everything towards them. We need to fix this imbalance. And like Jeff said, November 7th is a very important day. It's a day where we make our change. It's a day where the voices stand up and say, enough's enough. We want common sense back to our schools. And what I promise you, and also working in Fairfax County, because I will have influence in Fairfax County, we will bring common sense. We will bring transparency, and we will make sure that every county resident here in Fairfax has a seat at the table and has a voice. Now, with that, I'm going to leave some closing remarks to you guys. What do you want to say? I want to know about those leaves.
Rosemary. Look,
I'm still trying to figure out why we're talking about leaves,
it's called the leaf policy.
but I
Yes.
appreciate that you guys are connected with nature.
And
It's very important.
And you know what? I want to bring up one
And
important
obviously
point
conservation, because you
that
conserve
people
this
don't
leaf.
know, that you are an active member of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
I am. And actually, I was hoping to push an initiative to get my donation from my campaign actually went to planting 7 native trees along streamlines. And I was hoping to bring that to Fairfax County Public Schools because it turns out almost all of our schools are along a streamline that feeds into the Potomac and then into the Chesapeake watershed. And so being somebody in conservation, regardless, I wanted to make sure that my campaign made an impact, even if I don't get elected, hopefully I do. But if I don't, at least my campaign and the donors were able to make a contribution to Northern Virginia conservation.
Jeff?
I just want to say thank you, Tony. And Mary, I'm glad that both of you could be here. I am looking forward to day one on November
It's
8th,
going to be exciting.
after you're elected. And the parents, there are hundreds of thousands of parents in Fairfax County. They're looking forward to Sandra Davis and so many other candidates that we have out there that are just hardworking. But all this hard work, which a lot of it started in the 22 elections, even way before that, all this hard work will be nothing, right? If we don't go out and vote. It's the most important thing that we can do. Everybody says we want change. We want the books reviewed at a minimum.
Yeah.
Right. We want changes on some of the pronoun policy. We want more money to be allocated in different areas, especially kids with disabilities. That's so important. I have a goddaughter who is autistic, and so I understand the SEPTA concerns and issues. But we can't make that change without a vote.
That's very much true.
And so on behalf of this podcast, I ask all of you, right, to vote for Tony Savio and to vote for Mary Strayhorn, because this is the year that we can make a difference. And if we don't, it's another 4 years of everybody complaining and rallies and going and having public comments at school board meetings and then complaining again because their voices aren't heard. Your voices will be heard if you vote for Tony on November 7th.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words, and thank you guys listening. And if you have any comments, you want to add something to this, please feel free to reach out to my campaign, Sabia for Fairfax. If you have a question for Mary Strayhorn, she has a website also.
VirginiaForGoodGovernance.org.
So reach out to us. We're more than happy to meet you in person, answer any questions. Like I said, we represent you. It's not about us. I'm not a politician. Mary, she's a lawyer, so take it for what it is.
Yeah, you are a lawyer. aren't
Not
you?
licensed, so at least I get a pass.
You're a
She gets
leaf lawyer.
She gets a pass on that.
But
But, you know, we're here as normal people, wanting to take care of our community and represent you. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that is ecstatic about us stepping up and you know, standing there taking these fiery arrows that
There's a lot
are
of leaves
launched.
up there too.
Yes,
Tony.
yes, there is a lot of leaves.
They need to vote too.
Completely.
we don't need to personify.
If
the
you
Leafs.
haven't,
We love the
if you
Leafs,
haven't
but we don't need
registered,
to give
please
them,
register
like,
right away. If you haven't voted
personalities.
yet, and you don't want to wait till November 7th, early voting is started all around. I highly endorse every person that's running for school board that has a Republican endorsement. You're gonna need 7 out there. So if you're listening, and even then, if I get on there and there's only a couple of Republican um, uh, board members, I will work with everybody for common sense. So that includes Democrats for common sense. I will ensure that the strengths that I bring to the table, which is mental health and also school safety, is resonating with them. It'll be my job to make sure that I work with them to show them the reality of how we can make our schools safe. And like I said, if you want to learn more about my platform on school safety, go to my website. It's linked right there. If you go to my LinkedIn, you could go to my Twitter page or X page, and I lay down a foundation of my concept that I've used in the private sector. And I'm willing to put it out there because this is not about me, it's about our kids. So thank you guys, and that is it.